Start with history and the basics. It was officially known as the Republic of Yemen, and North and South Yemen unified in 1990, which made it officially the Republic of Yemen. It's predominantly Arabic-speaking, and 99.1% of the people are Muslim, and the rest being Jewish, Hindu, Christian, or Baha'i. Location: the territory of Yemen. It's located in the Arabian Peninsula in Western Asia. The capital is Sana'a. The territory includes over 200 islands, and it covers approximately 203,796 square miles. Politics and government. It's the only state located in the Arabian Peninsula that has a purely republic government, and it's the first country located in the Arabian Peninsula to give their women the right to vote. Population has one of the highest growth rates of population. Their population is expected to double to 40 million in just 23 years. The population is currently approximately 25,569,300, and the life expectancy is 65.9. And issues. It's one of the poorest countries in the Arab region, and the population is rising too quickly. Yemen already experiences water shortages and is expected to experience even worse shortages as the population continues to rise. The Yemeni economy is caught in a jobless, slow growth cycle, leading to stagnant per capita incomes and rising levels of unemployment, particularly amongst the youth and women. 27% employment rate was in 2014, which is obviously pretty bad. We'll move on to media and the basics. Television and radio are the most popularly used forms of media in Yemen. Their press used to be some of the most outspoken press in the nearby region, but things have changed due to conflict and war in the area. Media is now tightly linked to political parties, and a women's revolution is underway, and women are demanding equality, but recently they've been told to stop. The press. Freedom of the press in Yemen has become non-existent. In 2011, under the reign of President Ali Abdullah Saleh, the press knew what lines that could and could not cross. When his presidency collapsed, though, these lines were blurred. Press members and journalists, etc., have been known to be, especially in recent years, fired, arrested, or even kidnapped by gunmen and militias. It has become dangerous for them to do their jobs. Women were speaking out, but are being silenced again. Women were always looked down on as inferior. Since 2011, Yemeni women have made significant strides in their struggle to be taken seriously as leaders and decision makers who are on equal footing with men. Women being threatened with guns, men insist that it's not the time for women. Media outlets really being run by the male political figures, so women don't have much of a say in anything. If they threaten these leaders and their ideas, they will be taken down.
Moving on to women in the military, I have found 3 sources that detail specific experiences of women in the military. The first article is titled Yemen's Women May Hold the Key to Solving the Country's Devastating Civil War. I have a quote that says, "Several papers have found that women's involvement in peace building increases the probability of ending violence by up to 24%. In Yemen's failed talks so far, very few women have been included at a national or international level." I apologize for that. In the second article I found called How Yemeni Women Are Fighting the War, I have a few quotes that detail how specifically women are included in the Yemeni militia. The first one says, although many Yemeni women discourage their family members from taking part in the conflict and very few take up arms themselves, they also help recruit men to the army. They also support combatants by cooking food for them and helping to distribute it. So by typically fulfilling their role as women in the society, they help influence men and help support them. That isn't really considered helping in the sense that they're looking for. The second quote says that since the war is not equally intense in every part of the country, there are better possibilities for women to participate in peace processes around the port city of Aden in the south than it is in the north, where the Houthi army has taken control and Saudi coalition strikes are part of everyday life. Accordingly, women's conditions and activities differ from one region to another. They would also tell women that they are not allowed to appear in public before men. And I have a quote from a specific Yemeni woman on her experiences with women in the military. She says that they, referring to the Houthis, are opposed to women playing a role in public life. According to them, a woman's role is restricted to cooking and housework. They marginalize women if they deny their role in the community. So the Houthi individuals are the rebels working against the Yemeni government and the Yemeni people. They have traditional values on Sharia law and women, so typically they are not fond of fighting against women and have very limited ideas of what a woman is supposed to do in her societal role. The second article I found is titled Yemeni Women Armed and Dangerous. This discusses specifically how women are being implemented currently into the government and into the military as a militia force. This quote says, "The situation has led to pro-government popular resistance forces to recruiting women fighters in their fight against the Houthis, and they now take on several security roles and military tasks." The next quote says, "In the past few months, dozens of women in Taiz have undergone intensive training which have enabled them to participate in security raids, inspections, and the occasional gun battle." Taiz is in the south, which is the predominantly Yemeni government pro side. The next quote says, "Women are given police jobs and can search gunmen who enter or escape towns disguised in women's clothing. Also, men do not search them and do not raid homes where women are present, so these women are given these tasks," says a specific individual. Also, the commander and trainer of the unit that includes female volunteers, Muaz al-Aziri, said that 150 women repeatedly asked the commander of the popular resistance in Taiz, Seika Hamoud al-Mekalafi, to integrate women into the ranks of the militias and conventional army units, and eventually this individual did give in, and women are now part of their militia. Yassiri says that women's rights activists also volunteered to fight even as human shields, and their enthusiasm led local military leaders to finally accept their requests. Moving on now to violence against women. Again, I have found 3 articles that detail the experiences that women face with violence in Yemen. The first article is titled, "Violence Against Women Escalates Under Yemen's Brutal Conflict." This conflict they're referring to is, of course, the civil war. The quote says, "The war and its ramifications have impacted all, at all levels, including their personal lives and relations," said the director of the UNFPA supported women's shelter. "We have noted that domestic violence has increased and the divorce rate is on the rise." Again, another quote, "Even before the conflict erupted, gender-based violence was widespread. Some 92% of women said that the violence against women was common in their home, according to a 2013 survey. Since then, the issue in Yemen has escalated significantly, and now 5 years later, that number has grown." The second article is titled, "3 Million Women and Girls at Risk for Violence in Yemen." I just have one quote from this source. It says, "Some 8,032 incidents of gender-based violence were recorded between January and September of 2016, which includes incidents of child marriage, rape, domestic violence, with 64% of cases being emotional or psychological abuse or physical assault. The true extent remains far greater in light of social norms that discourage reporting." This number for the 64% has risen significantly since 2016, especially under the incidence of child marriage, due to the unstable economic factors in most homes. Women and children are being sold off as brides much sooner in order to make money for their household. My last source for violence against women is titled, "More than 10,000 Attacks on Yemeni Women in 2016. I have a quote that says, "The conflict in Yemen has made women and girls more vulnerable to gender-based violence, with more than 10,000 cases reported in the last year. the UN Population Fund said on Monday. Another quote says, "Incidents of gender-based violence have reportedly increased by over 63% in the last 2 years," says the UNFPA, marking the second anniversary of the Saudi-led intervention in support of the internationally recognized government against the Houthi rebels.
Preview.
Alright, now we have politics and law of Yemen. So first we're going to go into some details about the Yemen Civil War that my fellow groupmates have talked about previously. So the Yemen Civil War started in 2015 when President Hadid was forced to flee the country by Houthi rebels. Saudi Arabia then formed a coalition to try and restore Yemen's government, but unfortunately have not regained control of the country since then. Yemen's branch of Al-Qaeda, also referred to as AQAP, moved in and took control of several areas after this civil war began. And President Hadid now governs from the port city of Aden, which they declared the temporary capital after he had to flee. The country is now divided into 3 regions: Houthi control, Hadid control, and AQAP control. So I have a map depicting where each control is being led from. So as you can see, the maroon color is areas controlled by Houthis and allied forces. The slanted line gray is areas influenced by Al-Qaeda. And then the just regular gray is areas controlled by anti-Houthi forces, or the ones being led by the president of Yemen. So there's actually women helping fight the rebellion, and they have some influence on the war. So they've been helping to recruit men to the war, and they're supporting them by cooking food for them and helping to distribute it as well. Since majority of men were fighting in the war, women were forced to maintain the social fabric of society and kept communities together, so they took on the house leader role. Women's roles now included nurturers, mediators, peacemakers, keepers of tradition, and most importantly, the breadwinners. So they were the sole providers for the rest of their family now. They also began to engage in humanitarian relief and in providing social and psychological support for people who have been traumatized by the war, especially with disorders like PTSD. So to counteract that, the war has had many effects on women. It has brought great insecurity about livelihoods and safety to them and their children. They now have new roles of peace building, such as first aid, child protection, and psychosocial support. They have increased fears about theft, murders, random shootings, and harassment that come from the rebels or the allies. And then their deteriorating living conditions and the absence of government salaries is increasing the problems within their community and in their household. And then they're also confronted by the spread of disease, the effects of PTSD, or domestic issues such as violence or the increasing rates of divorce. And then also going along with the laws in Yemen, I have the laws coinciding with women's rights. So they cannot marry without the permission of their male guardian and do not have equal rights to divorce, inheritance, or child custody. So if anyone was looking to divorce, inherit money, or obtain custody of children, women lack that right. Since the war has began, forced marriage rates have increased significantly. An estimated 65% of Yemeni girls are married off before 18, compared to 50% before the conflict. The lack of legal protection leaves them exposed to domestic and sexual violence, which has also increased since the war began. And then efforts have been made to improve the rights of women, but many cultural and religious norms and lack of enforcement have prevented equal rights. Since the war has kind of taken over the main ideas of the government, they're kind of putting women's rights on the back burner. So now we'll move on to health in Yemen. So there's a very strong lack of healthcare in Yemen. An estimated 14.8 million people lack access to basic healthcare. In 2015, which is right when the civil war began, 48% of Yemen's population was malnourished, one of the highest in the entire world. Rising food prices and the continuing blockade on imports of essential food items are causing issues on obtaining food, also contributing to that malnourishment. The majority of health structures are damaged or non-operating, which is a leading cause of why there's no access to basic health care. Only 45% of health facilities are functioning. Also, a limited movement of aid agencies on the ground prevents supplies from being transported. So this limited transportation of supplies to health facilities causes an issue for doctors attempting to treat their patients because they don't have the proper supplies to do so for whatever their condition is. And then the effect that this has on women is really declining the healthcare of women. So according to UNFPA, more than 3 million Yemeni women and girls are at risk of gender-based violence, and 60,000 women are at risk of sexual violence. So that goes back along with the effects that the war is having on these women and these girls. More than 8.8 million women and girls are in need of urgent food assistance because of their malnourishment. But in traditional Yemeni society, men and boys eat first, and only then can women and girls eat. And even with these food shortages, men still eat first, and then women and girls, including pregnant and lactating women, which is really contributing to the malnourishment of infants and also women as well. So this also highly affects women, especially those who are pregnant or have just given birth. So the prenatal and maternal health care is just as bad, if not even worse. An estimated 1.1 million pregnant and lactating women are malnourished. 75,000 pregnant women are at risk of developing complications during their pregnancy or even after. Yemen has one of the highest maternal death rates in the Arab region. 352,000 pregnant women are at risk because of food scarcity, which goes along with the malnourishment. 2.2 million women of childbearing age are in urgent need of assistance and protection, whether it be medical care or protection from domestic violence. And only 35% of health facilities that I mentioned, the 45% that were active, provide maternal and newborn services.
I will discuss the international and global issues.
Preview.
International and global issues. Some myths where women empowerment comes at the expense of men. Also, Islamic oppresses women and forces them into certain roles that they don't want to be in. Also, women hold a lower status in Islam, and also education is forbidden for women. Aging and disabilities. More than 3.25 million women between ages 14 and 40 are facing an increase in health and a decrease in protection risk for themselves. And also, children that have a disability are not allowed to go to school because of the school and school buses are not wheelchair accessible. And also, that is becoming a rule for them.
Preview.